This video today is it's really my own impressions of what's been going on since Donald Trump won the election. I mean, anybody can see that the Democrats continually lash out at Trump because he won the election. It isn't about whether he legitimately won the election. He did. But I think there's more hidden to it than even the Democrats. Rush Limbaugh's been saying on the radio the last couple of weeks that there is definite signs that Obama himself has what's called a shadow government. This means the Democrats are getting all of the facts and everything about how to attack Trump from somebody. And you have all of the media helping the Democrats, as they did even when Obama was president. And they're constantly the ones behind the bashing, the false news information that's being told on the media about, this, that, and the other. And in my impression, it's not only criminal, but it's also liable on the media. Somebody, whoever's high enough in those particular outlets of the media, should be held accountable. They should be indicted and investigated by the U.S. Attorney General for criminal acts against an executive officer of the United States government, that they are lying beyond the scope of it just being like a tabloid making up lies. This is a serious criminal offense to say things about Trump when all they've got to show for their lying and everything else is that they're saying, well, we just want ratings, or it's a very, very serious bias against Trump. And I think it's more than just he won the presidency. They have a personal bias against Trump as a person and not as president of the United States. I'll give you a point of reference. When Obama did things that were illegal, if you notice, the media always downplayed it, or they never discussed it, or if they did, it was very, very low-key emphasis. And now there's the total opposite of that about Donald Trump. Donald Trump does things and they say, oh, that's wrong, that's illegal, you can't do this. And it's just totally, it just overflows like a volcano. They keep pushing about it, and there's no legal grounds for them to continually escalate this kind of tension between somebody who's supposed to be trying to lead our country and the media, who he hates. Why does he hate him? Well, that's obvious, because the more they bash him and the more they make up lies, the less he'll feel obligated to be fair to them. Because that's why when he won the election, he says, I'm going to contact the media only through Twitter and other outlets. I'm not going to talk to them directly. And I happen to think he's absolutely right about that, because the media have not tried to go, they haven't done an about face about these attacks. It's like if you made up a chalkboard of priorities about the media, you'll see at the very high top of the list there is this indirect reference to the Democratic Party financing and funding these attacks by the media. And then the media itself is under the control of whoever their chief executives are within their networks. And during the latter weeks of Obama's presidency, it was determined that a lot of people who were supporting him and Hillary Clinton were high executives in those news outlets, and they were personal friends of Obama. And now it's like we've all seen what Obama has been doing to denounce and to degrade Obama, to do Trump, to make him look bad in front of the cameras. And I have to say this, the news media outlets should be absolutely embarrassed, but they ought to be put on notice that Trump has the legal right as the highest executive officer of this country to prosecute people who make up lies, who make up fraudulent statements about someone And all he's doing is trying to get the country back to what it used to be. And yet, who's behind all of this hoo-ha in the public view? Well, we know most people of the age groups from 20 to 30 represent millennials. We also know that about a third, or perhaps even half of that number, are representatives of homosexuality or homosexuals. The other part of that would be probably a quarter of the population encourage and endorse not only abortion, but they also endorse the legalization of narcotics. That includes recreational use. It means medical use. And that is not only a dangerous thing for our country to be aiming its direction at, but it means that people want to have the government controlling them. And that's what Obama kept saying, didn't he, during his time he was president for 8 years. He kept saying over and over again, socialism is controlling people. And if that's what you want, then when I leave office, you have to put Hillary in there so that it can continue. Enough people said, no, we don't want Hillary Clinton because we don't want another you. So the American public have now retaliated, those who represent what I call the abnormals, because people are made a certain way. And if you want to live in an abnormal function or way, then you should be willing to say, if people don't like how I live, then you should, as the person living that way, you should leave this country. You should go someplace else. There are countries in the world, I know in Europe especially, who don't have a problem with any kind of lifestyle people live. And I'm sure they would envelope you in love and affection. But America, whether you believe it or not, was founded on one principle, and that was the Bible. That's why the Christians and the other people who came here, who sought refuge from the kind of tyranny that the kings of England were putting against them, they didn't like to be taxed. They did not like the government telling them how they were supposed to worship, who they were supposed to worship. And that is why when the Constitution was written, there is a very direct reference to, in God we trust. It says, and we were endowed by our Creator. Well, an atheist is going to say, well, that's just a symbolic reference. No, it was not a symbolic reference. There were no such things in 1776. So what is all this leading to? It means that our nation wants to get back to what it was founded on. And that's why Donald Trump was elected. And those who have loved Obama for 8 years, they don't want this country to go back in the direction that it was actually in for almost 200 years. Now they want the country to go down the sewer, and in the process they feel good about themselves because they've lived the lives and the way that they've wanted to, whether or not it means the destruction of this nation. And I have to say this, you're an idiot, because your rights should not encroach on the rights of everybody else. And that includes that we have to put our lives on the line because you want to live that way. That you want to become a pothead and smoke marijuana or use marijuana and say, well, I have medical problems or whatever. Well, there's other options open to you besides having to use narcotics. And children especially. Children are susceptible to this kind of stuff because at this age in their lives, if they get addicted to something like marijuana, you think they're going to get off it when they're 20 or 30 or 40 years old? They're going to be addicted to it. People have been saying that about drugs for the past 60 years. And now look at our society. People are just saying over and over again, we don't want to face reality anymore. We want to live as high as we can. And that's why they loved Obama, because Obama gave them everything that they wanted. He wanted people to be dependent on him, because as a socialist, that's exactly what socialism is. It is the control of your life. It's the control of your existence as a person. And that's what America is retaliating against. It has nothing to do with what Donald Trump is trying to do for this country as much as it is they don't want him trying to change and fix what Obama has already created in this nation. And that should disturb anybody who says we want freedom, but we also want responsibility for what we do. And people don't have that attitude anymore. They don't even care about freedom. That's why they said to Obama over and over again, we don't care. Do whatever you want to. Just let us have our marijuana. Let us have our fundamental right to warp society into thinking the way we do. And that's why you saw this this constant bashing against people who did not accept homosexuality. The bakers who lost everything. Let me ask you a question. Why did the government step in and say that a private citizen had to adhere to the Constitution just because they offer a service, when the Constitution is only supposed to be liable for those who are hiring people and not people who are offering services? Services does not mean that even people who don't represent the government have to adhere to the Constitution. The Constitution is supposed to be for the masses. That means government controls what the Constitution says. The Constitution doesn't say you have to abide by race, color, religion, sexual orientation, all the rest of it, because it says that. That is only for the adherence of those who represent the mass control of our country, and that's the government. Now, the government should not and never has had the legal right to step in to a private matter where one person has an issue with another and says, well, we don't think you should be doing that anymore. We're going to step in and do blah, 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 The government stepped in, we know, during the civil rights issues, and they legitimately or they legally took over certain colleges because they said, well, they had the right to say that they were not going to accept students of different races, but then the government forced themselves in and said, we're going to make you accept whatever you don't accept or don't believe in. And now they've gone the next step up. Socialism now says, if you control the masses, it means you take away their individual rights, you're taking away their individuality, and therefore it works. It'll work because then we have control over everything. And that is, to me, what Obama intends to continue to do, even outside the scope as President of the United States. To destroy this country, he has to continue to subjugate and control people's attitudes. People's individuality has to be eliminated. And that's what he started in 2008. And he's continuing it right now. And all you have to do is turn the TV on and hear about the total ludicrous attitudes that people take, that because they don't agree with Trump, that gives them the legal right to take away everything he's tried to do and say that's our justification because we don't agree with him. No, that's not the way it's supposed to work. Freedom does not mean taking freedoms away from other people. It means you have the right to express your feelings, but not to subjugate somebody else. That's what socialism is. And I say, if it's not evident to you right now that Obama is still running the show outside the scope of the presidency, then you're high on something which he gave to you, and now you don't care about anything else. And that's why, even in Georgia, they're pushing about the legalization of recreational marijuana, the legalization of forced growing of the marijuana in this state. Which right now they're saying we're not going to allow that. Well, if they're allowing everything else, there's nothing that they can't stop. They'll just keep going on and on and on with it. And to me, that's a scary situation, because America cannot be free if we're being subjugated by a select group of people who say this is what's going to happen and this is the way it's going to be and that's the end of it. That's what Obama kept saying for 8 years. And we thought when he finally left office that was the end of it. It wasn't.